Has Mike Gundy's time come at Oklahoma State? Can Billy Napier find a way to possibly save his job? All that and more from week number 2 of college football. This is a College Countdown podcast. I am your host, Josh Neighbors, here on 365 Sports and the Rogue Media Networks. Glad to have you alongside us. Make sure you guys find this podcast wherever you all get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Making sure the volume is all good. We'll check that. Then you guys can find us on X/Twitter. I'm at CCPodcastJN. The show is, I am at Josh Neighbors _. Jack Allen's at Jack Allen TV. We'll have him on Wednesday. Interested to see what Jack's got from this week. We had a really hectic and busy week last week with here in Little Rock. We had the Razorbacks game against Arkansas State. So that made things a little bit crazier. And Paul was off last week, so I was not on his show on Friday, but things should go back to more standard, more normal week coming this week. I think that takes care of all of our admin. We're brought to you guys by DraftKings. More from our friends at DraftKings coming up later on in the show. We'll talk about that as well. But yeah, I think this week, number 2, think about it, like most teams now, even some teams like Iowa State is through a fourth of their season, right? They've already played 3 games, so they're 25% of the way home. Most teams are a sixth of the way home. So I know it's a small sample size, but there's starting to be a sample size. And most teams that we're going to talk about, the power conference teams, have played somebody worth a you-know-what. In the case of Iowa State, they've played 2 somebodies ostensibly worth you-know-what. K-State, they're having a tough time, but at least name brand value. They played them. USF's played both Boise and Florida, and they're going to play Miami this week. So there's starting to be some results that are mounting, and we're going to have some things to say about those results. And I think one result that stands out to me, I think we have to start, and I'm going to start here. I know the Oklahoma game is big, but on this show, I want to cover some stuff that kind of more big picture. We're not talking enough about Oregon this weekend. Oregon absolutely thumps Oklahoma State 69-3 in a game where Oklahoma State was a 27.5-point underdog. Not only do they look that, it was worse than that. I mean, they lost by 66 points. And this set all kinds of records. And I know there's a lot to be said about Oklahoma State and, for Mike Gundy and company, they lose the quarterback, obviously. So they're a little bit frustrated on that front. Maybe you can't judge them totally. But they were never competitive in this game with Zane Flores, who I know he's a young quarterback, but he still had some time around. Right? It's not like he's never been around. But they were just terrible. And they had no energy. And Oregon, from the word go, made them look, absolutely terrible. And Oklahoma State had no answers. They gave up 312 rushing yards and 5 scores all on the ground. And we got 312 yards, 8.4 yards a carry. That's even with sacks and negative plays in there adjusted in. I don't know if they actually recorded any sacks, but I believe it's not sack adjusted because it's ESPN. That's how they normally do their stats. They had 9 first downs in this game to Oregon's 24. They allowed 631 yards of total offense. They only threw for 67 yards. They were 3.5 yards per pass. They were 3.4 yards per rush. And they got absolutely smoked. And the thing about Mike Gundy is you look at his record, 170 and 89. And for him at Oklahoma State, this has been a job where he has maintained it. And he's done so much for that program. He really is the modern version of Oklahoma State football. But that program's given him a lot, too. His flirtations were well documented with a lot of other schools as kind of time went along. He used those flirtations to get more money out of Oklahoma State. And look, this is a guy that's got, if you look across his, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think he's got 8 10+ win seasons. He's been to numerous New Year's Six bowls, and he's had a ton of success at a school that's numbered 2 in their state. There's a lot of talent in Oklahoma, but they're number 2 in the state, to be honest about it. And since 2020, though, I think you've seen kind of the cracks have been there, because this is a guy that had a losing season back in 2005. And from that season on, they've never had a losing year up until you got to last year, where they went 3-9. And I thought you saw some of the cracks for that program back in 2022 when they went 7-6. Then they followed that up with a 10-4, but then they went 3-9, and now they're 1-1. And I think that while Mike Gundy might still be a good coach, he's not the version of Mike Gundy that we expected before. Now, I think a good question for Oklahoma State fans is the newer version of Mike Gundy, where he is still a good enough coach to occasionally elevate you, good enough, but how many 3-9s are you going to have to eat? Because this team does not look good. And look, I know in the modern era, it's tough to absorb a quarterback injury like the one that Oklahoma State suffered. But if you look at this team and they lose Presley, really good player, really important player. And at running back, they don't seem to have one of those guys they've had. I mean, look at the lineage of the running backs they've had. That you've had Ollie Gordon, you've had Jalen Warren in recent memory. I mean, they've stacked up really good running backs, over the years. Like Mike Gundy's had a bunch of really good guys. Think about Ollie Gordon the last 2 seasons. You go back to 2022, when they had Dominic Richardson, who obviously had a good year. That's where Ollie Gordon started to come on the scene a little bit. Back 2021, you had Jalen Warren, who was a massive part of what they did. You back to 2020, they had Chuba Hubbard. They had him for a couple of years, back in 2019 as well. They had guys going to the league all the time for that. Justice Hill. I mean, right before that, they had guys going to the league for the last now 7-8 seasons out of that running back spot. Remember they had the Justice JD and LD, that was the Hill, King and Brown law firm, whatever you wanted to call them. But it's been basically the last decade or so, they've been really turning out running backs. And I thought the best thing about what we saw from Mike Gundy was his ability to adapt the play style of Oklahoma State to his roster, right? So you've got a team that can be running first and try and play a bit more defense. Defenses have been up and down for them, but when they had Jim Knowles, obviously it was a really strong defense, and you could tell, hey, this could be a calling card for the team, running the football, playing good defense, and it manifested in multiple 10-plus win seasons. And they've been able to, kind of have game manager quarterbacks. Like Spencer Sanders, when they had that really good season, was more of a game manager. Alan Bowman, I'm not sure how they won 10 games in spite of him, but they did, right? And so it's not like Oklahoma State can't return to the Big 12 championship game and ultimately a college football playoff, but the level of quality out of Oklahoma State is not what we're used to seeing. I mean, their last now 14 games, they are combined 4-10, right? And that's not what we're used to seeing from a coach that consistent. And I thought the cracks were there back in 2022. And I don't think it's a mistake that the era of NIL and transfer portal has not jived with them completely, because they're able to get the most out of their guys. I just don't know if they're going to get as many guys, because Mike Gundy, you have to have a certain personality to play for him. I mean, he is a demanding, hard-nosed, tough coach. And I don't know if guys want to play for him in the same way they wanted to play for him previously. And look, like I don't think everybody should have to play for a tough, hard-nosed coach like that. I also don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But if you're not asking those questions, that's fine. And once again, I don't think it's that Mike Gundy's lost his touch. But if he's unwilling to change, and that's kind of his personality, then it's weird to me. He's been unwilling to change what they do really well. It's been more of the, all right, run the football, play defense, rely on our backs to win. But when it comes to managing personalities, he's not really willing to change. And I don't think the OAN bit from a few years ago has necessarily killed him, but people do make comments about it. I was watching the game with some folks the other night, or talking about the game at least, and somebody mentioned like some of the political stuff that Mike Gundy does. It's at least on the radar of young people. Like we are, as I'm 28, so that the younger generation is a bit more cognizant of where Mike Gundy stands politically and kind of that tough-nosed nature. And he's a weirdo. He's a different type of guy. But you're wondering if it's run its course. And I think you're seeing that with his age of coach. So I'm going to use some of these guys as an example. Gus Malzahn is 59 years old. All right. Chip Kelly. Let's see. Chip Kelly is 61 years old. Bobby Petrino, I know he's over 60 years old, 64 years old. And you go and you see where Mike Gundy is. And I'm not advocating that he goes that route, but he's 58. So you're seeing this class of coach. All of these guys I mentioned, Petrino, Chip Kelly, and Gus Malzahn, all successful head coaches, and all were sitting head coaches that left to go take coordinator jobs. I think it's because that era of guy who has not that not that predates it, but has lived through it and gotten a bit older during the NIL portal era, you're starting to see those guys get phased out. And actually, not only that, they're phasing themselves out. These guys are taking themselves out of the major Division I head coaching ranks, and they're keeping themselves in the coaching ranks, but they're doing so as coordinators. I don't see Mike Gundy doing that, but I think there's a reason for it, because these guys still know football, but they kind of want to be able to do it on their own terms. And going and being a coordinator allows you to do that. You know, we're seeing Jim Knowles, and Jim Knowles is a guy who's in that range, right? Jim Knowles is, 60 years old. And you got to think that after the performances we've seen at Duke, Oklahoma State, and Ohio State, that Jim Knowles would definitely be up for a head coaching position. And he has decided to maintain his status as a coordinator. You know, Bud Foster did that forever at Virginia Tech, and Brent Venables just recently made the jump. Some of these guys are like, you know what, I'm better off as a coordinator flipping backwards, or I'm better off staying as a coordinator. And I think that's a self-aware move. I think these guys who are that head coaching class that went and took a job as a coordinator saw what was happening and said, you know what, maybe I'm better off not as a head coach and doing this as a coordinator. And I think Mike Gundy's got to be put maybe in that category. I don't know if coordinator is the right spot for him, but also, you know, I think like the idea of why those guys made the change is something that maybe Mike Gundy should consider, because I don't think he's long for that job anymore. It's just not. It's like the vibe there is just not. There's no vibe there, right? I mean, the vibe right now is, man, they got punked, right? And they're not some unit that can punch above their weight class when they play really good teams. We saw it when they played Texas a few years ago, man. Like, they got absolutely thumped. And look, they were getting rolled by Arkansas last year. If you go back and you watch that Arkansas game from last season, they were not the better team on the field. They were the more opportunistic team, and they had some good players around. Presley was still there. You know, Ollie Gordon was there, and I think Ollie Gordon took a lot of attention off some of the other guys, but they are not going to be able to maintain any advantage. And they were able to find really good players, especially receivers in different places, but they've kind of lost a whole lot of that. And I'm concerned for what Mike Gundy's got at Oklahoma State. And yeah, I mean, it just, you know, sometimes it becomes time, but like, it's starting to look like it's time. We'll talk about Billy Napier, whether it's time for him next, but first, a word from our friends at DraftKings. The crown is yours with the DK Sportsbook. You guys can go find DraftKings now. And look, folks, you got big week 3 coming your way. All right. Some big top 25 matchups. Thursday night, Friday night, Indiana State, Indiana. I'm not sure you want to put wager on that one, but we've got Clemson 2-0 hosting Georgia Tech. We've got a Temple hosting Oklahoma. And then you go down the line, the big SEC matchups, obviously, this weekend, Georgia and Tennessee. Iowa State's going to Arkansas State, which is interesting. I'm not sure why they're doing that. A surprise top 20 matchup between Miami and USF. Can the Bulls keep things rolling? Big Saturday night with Arkansas on the road at Ole Miss, Florida at LSU, and also A&M goes to Notre Dame. Also, South Carolina and Vanderbilt is an interesting contest as well. South Carolina is an interesting line. So it's less than a touchdown favorite over Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just hammered the Hokies at Lane Stadium. Obviously, an interesting result there. So you guys can go to DraftKings. The crown is yours. Those are some of the big matchups. And they've got great player props. They've got some futures as well. A guy that you can maybe take a flyer on, Sawyer Robertson. We'll look at his odds according to the DraftKings Sportsbook here in a little bit. But DraftKings, the crown is yours. Use promo code NEIGHBORS, NEIGHBORS. That's NEIGHBORS, like your next door neighbor with an S. If you bet $5, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet those $5. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas. Fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies in jurisdictions. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, visit dkng.com/co/all audio. All right, so is there an opportunity for Billy Napier to save his job? The reason why it's getting talked about is that schedule does not get any easier for the Gators. After they fall against South Florida in a game where, look, if you allow the opponent, a group of 5 opponent, to score just 18 points, 18 points, right? If you allow that and you're at home, you should win the game, right? And not only that, they didn't win the game. They've got at LSU, at Miami the next 2 weeks, Texas at home, at A&M, Mississippi State just got a nice win, and then Georgia, right, in the cocktail party. And they've got at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. This could go really sideways. There's a lot of ways this could go sideways for them. And, I mean, while you could say, hey, there's opportunity, did that look like a team that's about to take advantage of some opportunities? No, the good news is their defense could be really good because their front looks like they could be awesome. They've got some really tough players up front, but man, I have a tough time seeing this thing go any way but south. I really do. And I think that, because the opportunities are out, I'm not going to write him off just yet. And they've got a really special player quarterback. But this season was supposed to be the year. They kept with him because this is the year. I think Scott Strickland used up all of his equity on the statement of competence a couple of years ago. I saw that circling back around once again. But it seems hard for me to see any situation with this schedule in context where it goes well. The opportunity's there. I mean, yes, I guess the answer to the question is there a chance to save his job? But, is that the right question to ask? The right question to ask right now is, man, does this team quit by week halfway through the season? There's a chance of that. And I saw Bud Elliott on the Cover 3 yesterday mention how they front-loaded a lot of their deals to make money for some rev share stuff. And so Florida could be one of those schools where guys already got the money. And if the coach is cooked, there might be a situation where the guys are like, how much do we really care about this season? So I think that's something that's obviously possible. I think it's something that we have to be mindful of as well is that's cool. I think Napier might be cooked. And it's weird that week 2 we're talking about coaches being donezo, but I think that's reality for some of these teams. All right. Also, let's get rid of that. Ba-boom. So last thing I want to mention, man, Sawyer Robertson's having a massive year, and this allows us also to talk about our friends at Draftkings. But Sawyer Robertson right now at Baylor is playing on a ridiculous level. He is completing over 60% of his passes. He's attempted nearly 100 passes already this year. And he's number 7 touchdowns, no picks. And their defense looks really, really bad, which could result in them continuing to play. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. He's going to have a lot of opportunities, but the issue is that his team might not be good enough for him to win the Heisman. But you have to think that it's going to start creeping up. The odds are about to improve. He's plus 9,000 now. He's got worse odds than Baron Morton because I think Tech will be better. Worse odds than Rocco Becht. Worse odds than Josh Hoover. But I'll tell you what, I think there's a pretty good chance that he ends up throwing for the most yards in the Big 12 just by a function of how bad their defense is and how good he has looked. He has looked fantastic. And it's the one thing I think they can definitely throw the ball. And look, I see him as a day one guy. I really do. I mean, he has got first-round pick written all over him. He can make all of these throws. He's matured. You can tell he's mature. I mean, kind of a finished product, a quarterback at this point in time. Not always best decisions, but when you throw that many times, who's going to make perfect decisions? So I think Sawyer Robertson, interesting guy to look at. There's a good chance he has the best statistical season of any power conference quarterback in terms of pure numbers. I think that's very possible. All right. Make sure you all follow us on Twitter at CCPodcastJN. I'm at @JoshNeighbors_. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments and questions. Jack Allen coming your way on Thursday. Once again, DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Use promo code NEIGHBORS for a $5 bet to get you $300 in bonus bets. All right, folks, we'll talk at you mañana.